Hello, this is Ellen Mongan and welcome to Wow Mom. Today our guest is Jeannie Hannaman. Is that correct how I pronounced it? Okay. My co-host usually reads the bio, but today it's me. So I just welcome you, Jeannie. I was just praying with Jeannie and saying that she's the mentor of all mentors. And don't we need mentors nowadays? We need well-formed Titus 2 women that stand for Jesus. The world has things called life coaches, right? Life coaches, but we have godly women that have walked in the ways of the Lord, grown in virtue, honored their husband, formed their children. Now they pass their information, what God has taught them, their journey down to the next generation. So, Jeannie, welcome to the show, and I'm going to read your bio. I think it's been great. And then we have this little quote. It just blessed me. This is where I put on my glasses because I'm an older woman. Titus 2:1. Jeannie is known best for her formation and the founder of Elizabeth Ministry International. She offers hope, healing, and health issues on sexuality, childbearing, and relationships. She managed a headquarters for over 700 Elizabeth Ministry chapters on 6 continents and operated a retreat center for direct service to those in need. She's also the co-director of Reclaim Sexual Health and Navigated Betrayal, supporting those who struggle with or affected by sexual sin. Jeannie has over 45 years experience and assisting families through a variety of formats, including as an educator, developmental guidance developer, and parish, that's why I don't read it, pastoral and family life minister, Catholic radio senior manager as well. Talk show host, on-air contributor, consultant, and retreat director. Jeannie has a master's degree in adult Christian community development with a concentration in family life. She is specialized and trained as a natural family planner instructor, a doula, and a childbearing professional. She has a big resume. She's an early childhood specialist, bereavement consultant, chastity educator, addiction recovery advisor, and partner of a sex addict guide, and the healing of prayer facilitators. Jeannie's personal journey, now this is the important part because this is what led her to her ministry. Her personal journey is that through her husband's pornography addiction, extended family life ministry experience, and her belief in the power of God's grace makes her sought after as a confidant, that's important, and presenter. Jeannie is an internationally recognized state and national award within the church and the secular community. Drawing from life experiences, advanced training, and strong faith, she offers practical tools to help people make wise life decisions, emotional tools for developing healthy relationships, and spiritual tools to transform pain to peace. I love that, pain to peace. Well, Jeannie, best part about Jeannie of all is that she raised 2 fine daughters, and she has a wonderful husband, and she's Pat and my friend. Deacon Pat and I are friends with Jeannie and Bruce, and welcome to the show, Jeannie.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you so much.
I didn't realize you'd read that whole thing, but you know.
Oh, that's right. I don't know. I just, you know what? This one lady got on the show and she's like, wow, I feel pretty good about myself. Sometimes you have a bad day, just pull out your resume and go like, whoa. It's not that Jeannie knows that all she does is through the grace of God. And that's what the most important part is. I read this great quote today, Jeannie. You can quote her on this. It's not me, but you can quote her on this. It says, it's from Women, Wine's a New Ministry for Women in Evangelization. And I connect with them. I try to connect with all the different ministries that are Catholic, but this is special. It came in my book. He Calls You by Name, a journal, devotional. A woman's soul is fashioned as a shelter in which other souls may unfold. And that is St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. And I was so blessed, Jeannie, because wouldn't that describe you?
Oh, that's a powerful, powerful statement.
You probably read it before. I was like, this came in my book. I should have read it earlier. It came from my bookmark. No, other souls can confide in older women like Jeannie, and she opens her heart in such a way that they can let their hair down, which I did just a few minutes ago, and that's why I look like I look overdone. So what do you think, Jeannie? Where do you want to begin? Because usually you and I could do a whole show for 3 hours.
Exactly. So, I think, you read a resume that talks about a lot of things I've done in my life. I think the most important thing that I've done is I've just lived for 68 years. And that means I've had a lot of experiences. And through all those experiences, I've had wonderful, wonderful women older than me who mentored me throughout my lifetime. And what I believe that my challenge to any of your listeners is that no matter what age you are, you're older than someone else. And so the need to mentor younger people. I have 11-year-old granddaughter, and I watch her mentor her 2-year-old cousin over the weekend, you know, and how to do things and what not to do, you know. So it can start at a very young age, and it can go right until, you know, you meet your savior. So the need for us to be women who are available and willing to share our life stories. Some of them are exciting ones, and some of them are very painful ones. But too often we share, especially nowadays with social media, you know, we're sharing just all the highlights of the good times. And people who are suffering think they're the only one. And the greatest gift I think that we can give another person is to let them know that they're not alone.
I like that. And also, you know, I think too, everyone has a story. And one of the things about a mentor, I'm a mentor as well, is the listening ear and the well-trained tongue of a disciple. Because you sit there and then somebody go like this, Jeanne, I heard this, by the way. Wonder why she does that. I do about my husband all the time, but baby, why are you doing that? They may be doing it for a reason, Jeannie. You know what I'm saying? Everyone has a story why they do what they do. And mostly when you open your heart to a woman, you find there's brokenness. We all have brokenness, and we all have challenges. Jeannie and I have both walked in the footsteps and the high heels of some roads of suffering. We wouldn't have chosen them. I don't think I would have. I would be like, no, don't pick me. We have. And so that makes you more credible and more authentic. You know, don't you think? I think that, I think so.
Absolutely. You know, it's really a powerful ministry that happens, I should say, did happen in the past very informally. I mean, people didn't move out of their hometowns. So they grew up in the same area, knew extended family members and lifelong friends and neighbors. And there was always that listening ear available. I remember when I was a little girl, all the moms in my neighborhood back in the 50s, they all stayed home. And so they'd all be about 10 o'clock in the morning, they'd have their coffee clutch at somebody's house.
That's what I always talk about. We didn't have that.
Yeah, we don't have it because all of us kids would troop along, and sometimes these ladies would be laughing, sometimes we'd hear tears, and of course then we'd sneak up closer trying to figure out what was going on. But what I remember, especially about those tearful times, is some woman always had her arm around another woman who was crying. And I look at today, and yes, we're very connected with the internet and social media, but who's there to actually put their arm around you when you need that shoulder to cry on? And so, 30 years ago, I started Elizabeth Ministry. And the concept with that was to replace what used to happen informally in a more formal way, that there would be another woman who understood, who could be there and support you during the joys and the challenges and the sorrows of life.
That's right. That's right. So, Jeanne, that's what I wanted to talk about. Is Elizabeth Ministry? It's a nonprofit, and you did start it in Wisconsin. You want to go on with your father, your beloved father, that was teamed up with y'all for spiritual consolation. So, want to talk about him?
Sure. Father Kurt Gessner, and actually his biological brother, was also a Capuchin priest, as he was, Father Glenn Gessner. And Father Glenn was a missionary in Nicaragua, and Father Kurt was a pastoral associate along with me at a local parish. And in the summer, Father Glenn would come home from Nicaragua and would live with us. We were family. And so there were a lot of late night theological discussions that would happen. And through that, both of those priests helped my husband and I to really formalize Elizabeth Ministry. We had started it just for our parish, but the bishop, the auxiliary bishop from our diocese, Bishop Robert Morneau, and also at the time our Bishop Banks, both asked that I write down these materials to get a ministry started in other parishes. And so that was the start of Elizabeth Ministry. Both of those priests, Father Kurt and Father Glenn, have passed away. So we say they're now on our heavenly board of directors and are continuing to support and help Elizabeth Ministry as it grows. I formally retired this last year as the director, and I'm now serving in a consultant role. And we have a wonderful woman who's been in Elizabeth Ministry for many, many years, directed a chapter beautifully, and actually started our first affiliate for Elizabeth Ministry, which was a pregnancy resource center. And she's now the new executive director, Chris Crowley, for Elizabeth Ministry International. And they just moved into a brand new building. And so hopefully real soon, everything will be up and operational so that people can either start a chapter or get involved in an existing chapter.
Oh, so nice. Well, Jeannie, you'll be glad to hear we finally chose a church, a parish. And, you know, they say, well, at least Dorothy says this on Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home. We're actually in our hometown. We live in Evans, Georgia, with our children. And the home parish that we were in when Pat became a deacon, that's the only parish we ever were really in Georgia. And we thank the Lord, because I'm hoping to present to Father Jake this ministry and try to get something started with maybe a younger generation being the hands and I be the spiritual part, because, you know, we get older and then Elizabeth Ministry is a hands-on ministry. There's a lot to it. She's going to tell us in a minute what things are some of the things they do. Each chapter is kind of like set in a certain way, and then they are their own flair. The best one I found was in Florida, down the coast. It was amazing what they did. We're doing, it's like as little or as much as you want to do to serve the other women that are in your group. So I'm very excited. Please pray. I'm going to present to the bishop too, because there's been many talk about it, but we seem to have in Florida, there wasn't availability where we were. It wasn't a yes, open the door. So we hope to, and I believe in it. And I really do think that when women, they always look back and say, just like their favorite teacher, I have like my favorite mentors as well, you know, and you know, we just have to have that in our life. You know, everyone, you can learn something from everybody. So what are some of the main things Elizabeth Ministry does?
Well, one of the primary focuses has to do with experiencing a miscarriage or a stillbirth or an infant newborn who would die. And that is an area, especially the area of miscarriage, that I feel there has not been the kind of support happening from the church that needs to be there. And so what we believe in is if there's a void, we do our best to fill that. And so 1 out of 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage. And I believe with all my heart that until we start honoring the lives of those babies who lived only in the womb, we won't be able to stop abortions. We can't out of one side of our mouth say miscarriage is no big deal, and the other side say the unborn baby has dignity and worth. And so we have through Elizabeth Ministry many resources. One in particular, for example, is a pastoral guide for parishes on how to respond when there is a miscarriage, a stillbirth, or a newborn death. And there's just so many resources in there, ready-made, ready to go to be able to support and help that family. But the most important help I think that can happen is what we've been talking about today, Ellen, and that would be another woman who has experienced that kind of loss can walk alongside a new grieving mother and help her out. And what I discovered as I began this ministry, especially in this area, is that for so many women who had miscarried, the toilet became the tomb, and they didn't know what to do. And many times there was this huge guilt that they flushed their baby down the toilet. And for us to be able to say, our God is bigger than that, that we would encourage people to recognize that if that is their story, God understands in that moment of panic without having any understanding or training on what to do, that they did not intentionally disrespect their baby. But now the importance there is to name that baby, to honor that baby, to connect with that baby, let that baby intercede for you before the face of God. And now anyone who's having a miscarriage, we have something we call a miscarriage delivery aid, so we can help them obtain the remains of their baby. We have burial vessels so that the babies are able to be buried in an appropriate burial vessel. And what we found is at first we had beautiful wooden burial vessels that had been designed and made, but the cemeteries in many locations require a vault. So then the family had this huge expense of getting a vault. So the current burial vessel that we use has been accepted everywhere. It's never been rejected. Even the state of Florida, which has very strict rules because in many places they're almost below sea level, right? So it is a burial vessel and a vault all in one. Oh, so wow. All kinds of resources like that are available, including supporting the siblings. I was 4 years old when my little brother died, who had only lived for 3 days when he was born prematurely. And I grieved that immensely.
Sure.
People might ask me at times, where did my pro-life stance come from? And it came from the fact that from the moment that baby, was conceived, that baby was part of my family. And when the baby died, that child named Jimmy became as much an important part of our family as my sister and I were. And so I have had a beautiful relationship with the communion of saints, because I have my little brother from little on. I never felt alone. So for us to help siblings is very important, but also grandparents, because grandparents grieve twice.
That's right.
I remember my grandmother crying so hard when my little brother had died and she was taking care of me. And everyone's focus was on healing, which was right, but healing my parents' heart. My grandma and grandpa were grieving too, and I could see it. And I remember wiping a tear off the cheek of my grandfather. And knowing at that moment, God placed in my heart this ministry, I believe, when I was only 4 years old. And I say it is the legacy of my little brother.
See, I mean, everyone has a story. I haven't, I mean, my baby died full term, and you do things for that also, right? Not just this character.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a full term, because the you just don't know how to do or react or even minister unless you've gone through it. And then even when you go through it, you go, wow, why'd you choose me, Lord? Some you just don't understand. But we know that God works all things together for good, and we know that God loves us. And if we go through something really hard, it's not time to question God. It's time to lay back into His arms and rest, just like in the unfolding soul of another woman. Just like let your hair down and lean on them. There are times we'll be leaning on someone. There's times that we're going to lean on someone as well. It's a hard concept, Jeannie. I want you to tell on a happier note, but I do think that's so important. I hope the churches are listening, because some of the churches have gone to make gravestones on the church property. St. Mary's on the Hill here in Augusta area, and also St. Mary's Help of Christian in Aiken. Both have the little places and the burial for the little children. I thought, my Zachary is buried at Alleluia Christian community, which I was a part of. So I feel like he's in good hands as well. But that's important. Those little things. It's sad though. You can get the Kleenex out of the show and go in that direction. But Jeannie, how about telling about your story and how God blessed you? I'm going to say her story involves a tree. it involves Jesus, the hand of God, and then a praying husband. Want to tell your story about when you.
Which part? I've got a long story.
I'm sorry about conceiving.
Okay, sure. So my husband and I were told that we would never be able to have children. There were health reasons behind that. And in fact, I was told I had to have a hysterectomy, and I had to sign legal documents that I would never sue the doctors or the hospital because I had refused to have that hysterectomy. And God is still in charge of fertility, and not the physicians. Sorry, Deacon Pat, I know you're a physician, but when they proclaim to you, you will never ever have a child, and it's like, nope, God is still in charge. And so we did suffer multiple miscarriages, but we also do have 2 living daughters. And what she's talking about, that special sign from God that sometimes we notice and sometimes we don't, was that I had reached a very strong grieving point. We were 8.5 years into our marriage. I had just come back from the physician, my OBGYN, who had said to me one more time, Jeannie, you are never going to conceive. And a close friend of mine had just had a baby, and they stopped over, and I'm rocking her baby. And of course, the tears are welling up in my eyes. As much as I'm happy for her, my heart is hurting for a baby. And I look over, and I had a spider plant. If anybody knows anything about spider plants, they are very prolific and have lots of babies all the time. Well, shortly after I got married, I was given a spider plant, and that spider plant for that same 8.5 years had never, ever had a baby. So I used to laugh and say, I'm so infertile that even my spider plant can't have babies, right? Well, I'm rocking in my living room my friend's baby, and I look over at my spider plant, and it has a baby. Oh. And I just burst into tears, because at that moment I felt like I was betrayed by my spider plant, as silly as that sounds. And it was like, even my spider plant can get pregnant and I can't. Well, what I didn't know was that I was pregnant at that very moment. And that was my oldest daughter, Angela. She actually was a twin, and I miscarried one. but she went on to live. And many times I have to caution her. It appears like she's living for two. She gets so busy, kind of a thing. And then it was about 2.5 years later, the spider plant didn't have any other babies. About 2.5 years later, another baby appeared on the spider plant, and I was pregnant again with my youngest, Becky. After that, the spider plant died, and I never had another baby either.
But you're so many. You have so many spiritual babies.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Spiritual babies.
So many.
But it was, and people will say, well, that's ridiculous. No, I believe our God sends us signs and messages. He is the God of all creation. Many times we just miss those signs.
Right.
And so for us to be able to say that if you're suffering with infertility, there are many who do. Many people. Right now, used to be the statistics not that long ago was 1 out of 5 women dealt with infertility. I saw a statistic lately that said they actually are saying 1 out of 3 right now is suffering infertility. We are dealing with a lot of environmental issues. And so for a lot of women, they have way too much estrogen in their body because everything is made out of plastic. Our carpets are, all these things are made out of plastic, and the plastic is a pseudoestrogen, and we have to be able to have a higher progesterone level in order to maintain a pregnancy. So for women to understand that there are things they can do, after all, when Jesus wanted to heal the man at the pool of Bethesda, first he asked, do you want to be healed? Then he said, pick up your mat. And so there's things we can do, but there are things we should not do. And in the field of infertility, of course, the infertility treatment clinics have expanded, and they do things like in vitro fertilization, which is against the teachings of the Catholic Church. So there are things you can do and things you can't do. And I've worked in this area now, for way over 40 years. And I can say I support and back every one of the church's teaching 100%, not just because I choose to be a faithful Catholic, but because what they're saying, I have seen how necessary and important those guidelines are for families.
So important and so well said, Jeannie. And I'm going to tell you this, you are bold, and they don't know us. We're just out, and they know you maybe, so we can say what we feel the church is saying. If you don't know the church teaching, well, go to our church. Deacon Pat's going to be there preaching the truth with all the priests there. But find a priest and a mentor. Find people that are faithful to the church. The word faithful is so not said a lot. I mean, that just isn't. So we know that we can do stuff, but then we suffer the consequences. God is bigger than infertility. And if you're an infertile woman out there, listen to Jeannie's story again, rewind and listen, and know that there's always hope with God. He's never failed me, Jeannie. He's never failed me.
Absolutely. I have 7 beautiful little grandchildren right now.
You do, and she has one miracle baby, which I wanted to share about that after that, then the mentoring, because I do want to hear about it, because God sends you sometimes a trial that maybe you didn't ask for, but he does always, it's always a blessing in disguise. That's that poem I wrote for you. I don't know if you ever got it. It's always a blessing in disguise. At the time you're going through it, you just don't think you can even smile. Don't worry, it's okay. Sometimes you can't even smile, Jeannie, right? You can't go like, this is great. No, sometimes you go like this is tough, Lord.
Absolutely. Not only do we need that woman present with us who can put her arm around us, let us cry, share her story, her witness, help us maybe on practical things that need to be done,
right.
But also to turn to the scriptures and to the lives of the saints.
Right.
And make them your best friends. My very best friend is Elizabeth, wife of Zechariah.
Yes, this is the new thing.
That is what Elizabeth Ministry is named after. Elizabeth, as we know the story, was barren. And so my relationship with Elizabeth really grew during my years of infertility. And she was the one I turned to because I knew she would understand. Right. And I was able to have a very unique understanding of the scripture story of the visitation between Mary and Elizabeth. During the Annunciation, when God gives Mary his plan for her through the angel Gabriel, we know that Mary was afraid because the angel tells her not to be afraid. Well, she had a reason to be afraid. In those days, she was only betrothed. In those days, for her to be pregnant when she was not married, the custom would have been for Joseph to have her stoned to death by the community of women. And so she was scared for a reason. She knew the cultural situation. She was also scared because she knew how babies were created, and this didn't make sense. She had not known a man, right? But what does God give her? And I think this is the key we often miss in the story of the Annunciation and the Visitation. And that is that the angel Gabriel tells her not to be afraid. And then he gives her the greatest gift to give her the courage to do God's will. Because Mary had free will, just like Eve had free will, just like you and I have free will. And so what was that great gift? Well, right after he tells her not to be afraid, he says, your kinswoman Elizabeth is pregnant in her old age, for nothing is impossible with God. So what was the greatest gift? The greatest gift is another woman, another person who will understand what you're going through. And as we know, of course, Elizabeth was barren, and in those days, it was considered a punishment. And it would have been the cultural thing for Zechariah to leave her on the side of the road to die a very slow and painful death. But Zechariah is my hero. He's the first women's lib of a kind. He is the patron in my mind of marriages, because he upheld his marriage. And that is that he did not do that to Elizabeth. He continued to love and care for her. Now, Mary would have known that story. She wouldn't have known Elizabeth, because Elizabeth would have been ostracized by the community, and she did live about a 3 days away walk. But she knew the story, and she knew that Zechariah did not have her killed, and that gave her hope that Joseph would not have her killed. And it says in scripture, she goes with haste to go visit Elizabeth. That's how important it was to the Blessed Mother. So if the Blessed Mother needed an older woman to support and help and encourage her, then we do too. And so Elizabeth's been my best friend for many, many years now. And someday I've asked God that when it's my time to go, could you send Elizabeth to be the one to come get me? Can't wait to meet her in person, right?
So Jeannie, can you share a little bit about the Elizabeth? Is it your something about Elizabeth? I'm not going to share it if it's not too shared. Zachariah and Elizabeth, has that been added? Some grandparenting? Yes, it's so needed in our church, because you and I are getting gray haired if we would just not cover it. I mean, I am. And so that grandparenting is one overlooked ministry right now. Just grandparenting. Go on.
The grandparent area has been part of Elizabeth's ministry for 30 years. Okay. Because of, as I said earlier, wiping the tear off my grandfather's eye at 4 years old, let me know grandparents need to be supported during the grief that happens to their grandchildren, to their children. But also in today's world, there are so many grandparents that are not living across the street or even in the same city as their grandchildren. They're living either across the country or maybe even across the world. And so the need to really support grandparents who might be grieving the joyful times of connection as well. And then to allow a type of surrogate grandparenting to happen to grandchildren who don't have grandparents in their everyday life. And so the parish can start to provide these grandparents that are members of the same parish to become part of and connected to these young families. And it's just beautiful to see the many, many bonds that have been formed over these 30 years with some of these older people that would be alone and isolated if they didn't have that younger family that they are now connected to through their parish and their parish's Elizabeth ministry. But we are also expanding Elizabeth ministry into something that we're working on right now called Canticle Community. And Canticle Community, kind of the tagline is Catholic, I can't even say it, too many C's.
It's early in Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly.
Earlier than here.
Yeah, it's coming everywhere. Canticle Community, and the tagline for that is Catholic clarity in a confused culture. When I started Elizabeth ministry 30 years ago, everyone, no matter what faith they were, they kind of had babies the same way, and there were the same issues. And so it could be very much an ecumenical ministry. It could be, someone once told me it was a safe ministry. There was no controversy. Well, let me tell you, 30 years later, dealing with sexuality and childbearing is pretty controversial in 2021, right? Sure. And so Canticle Community is a place where people can actually, it's not set up yet, it's something coming. So I think this might be the first announcement, I'm not so sure. It's an opportunity for people to come together and to really help, especially the older generation, to come to understand and know the church's teachings on issues related to sexuality and childbearing and relationships, and then be able to provide that true Catholic clarity in our culture that truly is confused when it comes to issues surrounding sexuality and childbearing.
Oh, so important. And so, I mean, we just got a memo from we're in the Savannah Diocese, and how are you all going to celebrate? I guess it was Zachariah and Elizabeth's feast day as well as grandparent. So that was neat, Jeannie. I think it's so neat, but now tell about, I'm not letting Jeannie do a lot of talking. Jeannie speaks around the country, around the world. And if you ever want to have her at your church home or come speak at your place, please invite her and she'll tell her how to get a hold of her right now and then later too. Do you want to say how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. They can just go to elizabethministry.com or reclaimsexualhealth.com. Okay. And that would be a way to connect with us directly. I can even give the direct cell phone number would be 920-766-6641. That's 920-766-6641.
And if you're grieving now loss of a child or even some kind of I want to say if a tornado came in your life and you didn't expect it, you have to go find someone. If the first person says, "Oh, that's silly, just suck it up and you have Jesus," then you're gonna have to say this. This is way too hard. I need another sister like Moses needed Joshua on one side and Caleb on the other. Don't let that be your final support that you ask someone. They said just pray or just. People can do stuff in word and deed. We serve the Lord. It just says it's going to be prayer. We'll tell you through it. God's going to send people. It's in the hands of Christ. So, Jeannie, you have a miracle grandbaby. I try to keep up with you on Facebook. You and I, we have so much going on. We are all involved in our families, and then we are involved in our church and our ministry. So, how about this? That miracle baby's getting older now.
I'll tell you, we have, in my opinion, since I was told I could never have any children. My children are miracle babies, and so then are my grandchildren.
It's all miracles. Right.
But we did just celebrate 2 of my grandsons' birthdays in the last couple weeks here, and both of them were miracle babies from the standpoint. My daughter was also struggling with infertility, and Ellen was one of the prayer warriors to help her be able to conceive. And don't deny the idea of the power of prayer to conceive.
Right.
That's so important.
Everything. It starts with prayer.
Exactly. And as a doula, I was also present for the births of my grandchildren. And the oldest, who just turned 7 2 weeks ago, he was actually born what I would say stillbirth. He was very, no activity. He was, very gray. He was, for all practical purposes, he had passed away. My daughter and son-in-law did not realize that it happened. And I was just about to be the one to try to explain what was going on to them when I heard the baby cry. And so, he does have some complications because he did have some oxygen deprivation. But we just celebrated his 7th birthday and thanking God for that miracle. The next baby, who we just celebrated 2 days ago, his birthday, and he just turned 5. His birth, again, just the conception was miraculous, but his birth, he was born sideways. The doctor wasn't there yet because it was all happening so quick. The nurse panicked, and I ended up taking over and helping that baby get born. And so I've got an extra special bond to him.
It would be Dr. Jeannie to you.
So to be in a hospital, I've heard of ordinary people delivering in cars and at home, but at a hospital, come on now. But it was quite the experience, and in a major portion of that was how much my daughter trusted me. And when I said push and don't stop, she listened to me, and she really did. And so his life was spared as well. And then she conceived again, and that pregnancy was each of her pregnancies has gotten harder and harder. And they practice natural family planning. The doctors have told her she should be sterilized because health-wise she should never have another baby, but she trusts in God. And instead it's, God will give us the babies he wants us to have. And so this last pregnancy, though, was extremely dangerous and very hard for her. And I was again present and as a mama, very worried about her health. And this little baby was born with a variety of different issues, one of them being craniosynostosis, which is a closed skull, which her mother had. And at the time, 36 years ago, they said it wasn't hereditary. Now they know it can be. And so she's had a lot of different issues and surgery and all kinds of stuff. She's a bit delayed in her development, but oh my gosh, I had my first full, I'd say, conversation with her last Sunday, snuggling together, and she can do complete sentences right now. She's 2 years old, and she just has a heart and a compassion for people that only comes when a person suffers. And I looked at my daughter, and my daughter has the best heart and the best compassion for people because she went through a lot of suffering and pain. And I think my little grandbaby is going to follow suit with her. And that's how God allows, that I believe is why God allows some of these difficult things to happen, because it does do something to our spirits. It allows us to do, as your quote said, enfold others into our souls, into our hearts, into our lives, because we do have an understanding of pain and suffering, so we can be there for others who do.
That's right. Oh, that's right. And this little baby was so cute, even from the beginning. I don't know her first name. What's the baby's name again, Jean?
It is Tessa.
They're all beautiful. But Tessa, at one point, had a little crown. And I'm going, she is definitely an angel. We know that. So the angels unaware in your midst. There, one priest we had in Florida, Jeannie, he would go at some point in the year of this, the calendar of our faith, he would go, someone in this room could be a saint unaware sitting right next to you. Because we're all trying to be like Jesus, right? And like she said, the suffering is like the fast pack, like the Disney World fast pack towards the thing. No one volunteers, just so you know, but they do. It does change you forever, right? I don't. There's so many people out there, Jean, that don't understand suffering. But read the book of when Hannah, the Bible character Hannah, is weeping to have a child, and we know how that is. I mean, I was not infertile, but I know how that is to be wanting something and asking God for that something in his will, having babies, or your child be converted to the faith, or one of those, and you weep. And not only did she weep, Jeannie, she wailed, right? You've been there, you've done that.
Oh,
if you've never wailed.
Oh, I have wailed, and probably the area I've wailed the most in is what, you shared my bibliography. No, what is it? Whatever you told about me, is my husband was an active porn addict for decades in our marriage. And it was a very painful struggle. He started when he was 9 years old, sharing pornography that his father shared with him. He had a very dysfunctional childhood. And he tried everything he could throughout our marriage. And he'd do good for a long time, and then he'd slip back into it. By the grace of God, we were able to be connected to people who had created a program that had the brain science of change, using the understanding of plasticity in the brain and how we can change our behaviors. And he finally was able to get the healing he had been looking for. And of course, in scripture, it says that, by the renewal of the mind, and I've seen that, firsthand happen to my husband. And so, but the wailing and the pain of that experience, that's when I have wailed and wailed and wailed, and noises came out of me that sounded like a wounded animal that I couldn't believe were coming out of me. And now that is my primary ministry in my older retirement years here. As I said, I retired from active duty of Elizabeth ministry, but I have continued, and we just launched a new program called Navigate Betrayal. People can find it at navigatebetrayal.com. And this is for wives whose husbands have engaged in sexual sins, whether that be, online pornography, or, any type of pornography, or affairs, or anything of unhealthy sexual behaviors. And we're there to support you and to help you. It is a phenomenal program. Lots of mentoring in it from women who've gone through this, but also many experts who are able to shed insight and information that can help a woman go through this. So whether your issues relate to childbearing concerns, or they relate to sexuality issues, Elizabeth Ministry and Reclaim Sexual Health and Navigate Betrayal are there to help, and to be able to share with that Catholic clarity from a Catholic perspective. But also we are very strong into the sciences. So we believe very strongly that it is faith and reason that are, as St. Pope John Paul II said, the two wings that have to come together to help people through experiences of life.
And it's also love and truth. There's like that. My husband always says it's a balancing act on so many things. And what does St. Jerome say? Ignorance of scripture is ignorance of God. You have to get in and study. That's how I got over postpartum depression I had, by saying the word and exchanging. I always call it the great exchange. What it says, for what it was saying in my mind. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to ever stay there. That's why you find, help. Help means TIME. When I had postpartum depression, I went to my mentor every single week. I'm sure she got tired of it, because when you're down or you're in a trial, it's like the good news is when you have a baby, you tell the whole story 3 times fast, and then you want to hear it again. And then when you go through a trial, it's the same thing, but it's not as happy, and you say it, and then you want to tell her again. You heard it last week. But if you have a good mentor, they'll listen again, because something's being said that they're not hearing, and you're saying it because your heart's hurting. How many people out there have had a heart that hurts? A broken heart that you want healed? Well, Jesus is the healer. And so go to him in prayer. He will lead you through the scriptures, to different people, through circumstances. The journey itself is some just long, Jeannie, right? Some of the journey's long. Like it's not like a magic wand. They go, do, now you're better. It's not like that. The journey, you get blisters on your feet, and maybe you're misunderstood sometimes. But the truth is, the heart's job. The heart is Jesus's job. It's God's job. You bring him your heart every night, every morning, surrender it to him, and let him do the work. But you have to do something, Jeannie, don't you? You have to do something. That's when the mentoring comes in. Well, don't you think a mentor is not like a spiritual director? It's explain the difference, because so many people get confused. And I always go, I'm really more of a mentor than a spiritual director, because I believe the heart is God's responsibility. And I'm all about mentors being the ones that God's called to do that.
A spiritual director needs to be someone who's been very trained in that role to be able to do that. And so some people are called to that, and there are some good places you can be trained. Be cautious and careful that they truly are coming from a very strong Catholic perspective, would be my advice. But all of us are called to be mentors. As I said, I watched my 11-year-old granddaughter mentor my 2-year-old granddaughter on a few things this weekend. So if we're just one step ahead of somebody else, we have a vision or an experience that we can help that person get to that next step. And so everyone is called to be a mentor and to be a faithful mentor. And sometimes it gets confused, because when you're mentoring someone from a Christian perspective, and hopefully from a Catholic Christian perspective, you're going to be bringing your faith into the discussion, but you bring it in as sharing your story. It's not like you're giving direction to that person. You must do this, you must do that, or this is what's needed next. It's more where you're saying, well, like I've said, for me, going through infertility, having Elizabeth come right out of the pages of my Bible and become my best friend, that is a story I share and I tell. Now, is that going to be the experience of every woman I mentor who deals with infertility? Maybe not. Maybe they turn to Hannah, or maybe it's the neighbor lady they turn to, right? But what I'm doing when I'm sharing that is saying, find many someones in your life who can be there for you. And so I will share my faith journey as a witness, but not in giving direction to the other person on their faith journey.
I had an experience one time, Jeannie, where I was mentoring someone. She had an urgent, I've shared before, she had an urgent request, but I was on my way out the door for something. And I said, well, can it wait? And when you hear urgency in a voice that it can't wait, care means I'll be there. Not 2 weeks from Tuesday, I'll schedule you in. So if you're a mentor, it's a serious responsibility that if they're going through something hard, you're there. Now, you can't be there for everybody. That's why I be real careful who I mentor, so I don't take on too many that I'm not there. And then they feel like they're all alone. But you never lean on someone, even your husband, as much as you lean on Jesus, because then you have your eyes off of him. So he'll use people, and you'll know that God was speaking through them, and he was walking you through this journey, hard or easy. Jeannie, I just remembered you. I can't remember the word I said when I started. I did that funny. It's not because I'm old. It's just I just came out of my spirit, man. I think I said miracle mentor. I don't know, but Jeannie is actually a miracle as well. I had forgotten till we start talking. Jeannie is a miracle, and I'm looking at her because Jeannie's survived some things in life that No one has. And it was, she had a physical thing happen at a young age. I thought you were very young. I never went praying in the whole world pretty much, but you probably did too. And she recovered by using her own program. She didn't have the same problem. Do you want to share or you don't want to share? I share.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, one of the things you learn when you do a lot of mentoring is that your life becomes an open book for anyone.
Okay, good. So thank you. Because my sister had a stroke. You know that my sister then. So she's on a wheelchair. This is a good time.
Yeah, 6 years ago, I had a massive stroke. And it was so massive that the physicians at the hospital locally said there was nothing they could do, that my husband needed to institutionalize me, that it was that bad. Wow. Now, in the program that I told you helped my husband retrain his brain out of his sex addiction, in it, there are brain exercises that were designed from scientists from Harvard. And I go around teaching those, so I know them very well. And so I began using, especially just one in particular, that I began using. And it was amazing because within 5 hours of working one of those exercises constantly, within 5 hours, my brain began to recover. And right now, I mean, for a while I had to use a walker, and then for a while, well, actually, I probably started out with a little bit of a wheelchair. And then I went to a walker and then a cane. Now I can even run. I don't run very well because I'm 68 years old. That has nothing to do with the stroke. I'm just old and overweight. So I don't run very well. But I'm able to do that. I can read, and that had been my big prayer through this. Initially, I couldn't read, and I was saying, "Oh, please, God, I don't make me give up my books. I love books." I even had my husband surround my bed I was laying in with books just so I could hold them. I love reading. And so I can read. I still speak. I do, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm probably about 98% healed. And the other 2% just could be because I got older in 6 years. I'm not so sure. But, those kinds of things, right? But, I look at that, and the hardest part of my life was my husband's sex addiction. And to be able to say that Romans 8:28, that where God brings good out of everything, that if it hadn't been for my husband's sex addiction, going through all of that, learning these brain exercises, I would probably not be able to walk or talk or function at all today. And so the fact that what I thought was horrible and used to cry out, "Why are you doing this to me, God?" Now I can say, "I see why you allowed this to happen to me, God." And I'm grateful today that he did allow that to me. Another aspect of that was that I have an eye condition that was undiagnosed. And they told me, because of the eye doctors and specialists I saw after my stroke, they said that if I hadn't had that stroke, if I hadn't gotten in there, I would have been totally blind within 6 months. Now it's been 6 years and I'm still seeing and reading and doing things as an intervention. I asked for prayers because they said, they should be able to hold it off till I'm in my 80s. Well, as I turned 68, I thought 80 is getting closer. So, there'll be new discoveries between now and then. But I look at that and I think, people say, "Oh, how horrible you had a stroke." And I go, "Oh no, how wonderful that I was allowed to have that stroke, because through that, I was able to experience and recognize how God really is faithful to Romans 8:28. He does bring good out of everything. And I have a fantastic marriage right now. I'm able to enjoy my retirement with a body that works yet. And my function's pretty good. And I'm still able to see. So if I hadn't gone through those really difficult times in my life, I would be in a very different place today. And I'm happy where I am today. So to be able to encourage those who might be struggling with something right now, and it's not like it's wrong to cry out to God. After all, Jesus said, "Why have you forsaken me?" So it's okay for us to cry that out. But down the line, you're going to see your life story when you get older and say, "Oh, because that happened, this happened. Because that happened, then this happened." And you'll see that God's grace was carrying you through the joys, the challenges, and the sorrows to bring you to the point in a relationship with Him that it becomes the most important thing in your life, and you're ready to meet your Maker.
That's so beautiful. I was just about to go, proclaim his marvelous deeds throughout the nation. Jeannie has proclaimed. I don't even know what time we started. Jeannie, how embarrassing is that? That's why I'm unprofessional. No, we don't mind if we have bloopers. See, we're human. So we actually, sometimes there's bloopers, maybe the phone rings or so. Jeannie, did you know how we usually go about 45 minutes? We go 45. I'm going to say thank you so far. We didn't know we did.
Yeah, we did. Yep,
we close it off because we always do last words. Because women, they always have one more thing to say. I just want to thank the Lord, though, before we even do last words. If you're watching this show, maybe it's not for you if you're not crying out for a child like Hannah and Jeannie was and Elizabeth, or maybe you're not having a marital problem, or maybe you're not even having a stroke, but someone out there needs to hear the show. And it's been powerful. In the midst of our suffering, God is working out for the good. And we have to first face that mountain, and sometimes you have to climb it. It doesn't happen right away. She had to walk through a ton of stuff, which she didn't share, but I know Jeannie. So it wasn't like a piece of cake. It was day, 1 foot in front of the other each day till she got to see the top of the mountain, and she went, it's glorious. But when you look back, see, it's easier to look back. She can look back and say she has 2 beautiful daughters and wonderful grandkids, and her Grammy is a miracle. But as you're climbing that mountain, you need that one person on either side. I always say, I don't like chocolate, but whoever's going to bring the chocolate and the Kleenex, please take them with you. Pack your bags. My kids I have a lot of children, and you know that. And we weren't infertile. We are very fertile. And I always tell them when one child goes through a trial, we need to support that child. You could be the next one to pit. We're family. And that's what Jeannie hasn't mentioned yet. Her and her husband, Bruce, together, their biggest thing that they do is family. I mean, there's not just the miracle baby and the miracle firstborn, lastborn. There's so many families. Do you want to show me those families out there? Because I know the people right now are getting out of their homes more, and they got to do 4th of July. And family counts.
Oh, absolutely. And some people struggle because their family live far away. Sure, there it is. Some people struggle because their families don't live near them, or maybe they don't have, because many people who, are in the age of contraceptives, they might only have one sibling, or they may even be an only child for some reason or whatever. And so some people don't have that family to be connected to. And I'm going to see if I can remember this quote I saw. I probably can't remember it. It said something about, we're told that we are related by blood, but it isn't blood that makes a family. It is commitment. It is care. It is love that makes us a family. The others, you're just relation. And that touched me so deeply, so that we could understand, my mother and dad have passed away. And that's a grief when both your parents are gone, and extended family, etc., many deaths. And I grieve that. But what God has done is he has brought other people into my life that have become more family for me. So if you're blessed to have family that includes blood relation, great. But even if you're not, then be able to build your family with others from your parish, from friendships, so that you have that support and that bond in an informal way, and spend time with that family, however it came to be. And then be able to also, as a family, reach out to others and be that mentor, be that support that exists. I think one of the most important, my last words, as you said, my parting comment that would be is that back to that story of Mary's visit to Elizabeth. Elizabeth was scared, as I said, God blessed her with another woman who'll understand, but she was afraid she would be killed, because that was the cultural thing, right? Well, what does Elizabeth do when Mary comes to Elizabeth and Zachariah's home? Elizabeth says to Mary, "Who am I that the mother of my Lord should come to greet me?" She gave Mary the title, the mother of God. And Mary then was able to sing her Magnificat that says, "All generations will call me blessed." So the encouragement of one woman identifying and giving her identity, her mission, God's will for her life, gave her the courage that she needed to believe. And that's what we're all called to do within family, however it's created, within parish, within the world, is to give each other that identity that says, I know who I am. I am a child of God, made in the image and likeness of God. And God loves me unconditionally, and he will be faithful to his word to bring good out of everything that happens in my life. And that's the role of an Elizabeth minister. That's the role of a mentor. That's the role of the Catholic Christian community. And so follow the example of Elizabeth and Zachariah, who were there for Mary and Joseph. And if the Holy Family needed the support of an older couple, then we all need the support of older people. And to be able to seek out that kind of counsel, seek out that kind of wisdom, because we can never underestimate the power of a visit.
Amen. It's such a good word. That was my word for you, mentor among mentors. I think, I don't know, but Jeannie, you've been a delight. You know what I like about that story, Elizabeth and Mary, and I thought about when we throughout this talk, is that when Mary and Elizabeth came to see, Mary came to see Elizabeth, the baby leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth knew right away life has happened. And Mary, she became affirmed, and Elizabeth recognized the Son of God was housing within the womb of Mary. And that's the same way with when you meet a person like Jeannie. When I met Jeannie, you know that the Lord lives inside of her. It's like that whole quickening, like there's life inside that person. I can learn from them. It's so important. There's times in our life where we feel dead, Jeannie. Sometimes we feel half dead, but find someone who has life, that has a heart that can expand and house you. So I'm gonna thank you, Jeannie, for coming on. Jeanne Hannaman and Bruce both do help with Elizabeth Ministry International. I'm going to read this quote one more time because it totally describes Jeannie. And we just found it today. It was given to you about the book, but being the person I am, I read it today. Here we go. A woman's soul is fashioned as a shelter in which other souls may unfold. St. Teresa of the Cross. And we just thank the Lord for this ministry. And I hope every church listens to this in the Catholic faith. They need it more now than ever. And opens Elizabeth Ministry in their church, in their parish. And Jeannie will walk you through all the ways. And she'll even come speak at your church if you ask her, and they're there. So thank you so much, Jeannie. One more time, how to get a hold of you? How to get a hold of you?
It would be elizabethministry.com, reclaimsexualhealth.com, or navigatebetrayal.com, or call me at 920-766-6641. All right. God bless you, Ellen.
God bless you. And look at our website because she has things to sell as well, right? You have things that you sell as well. Thank you so much.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Bruce, too. God bless you.
Okay.